Hi guys. Wow. I feel like it's been a while since we've done math with all the testing and everything we had last week. So I think the first thing I'm going to do for today is go ahead and review what we've already done and what we've already covered. Because if you remember, we started off with line graphs. We did line graphs and then we did ordered pair, coordinate plane, plotting them. And I think I just decided, I think I'm going to go ahead and do a little review. I'll do a small review of what we've already done because we added a little bit to that each time. And then I'll go into what we're going into for this week. And that's adding a little bit more to what we've already done. So let's go ahead and take a look real quick. Just a quick review of what we have already done. And I will go ahead and share that with you so you can see it. There it is. All right, this is an example. Hopefully you're seeing this, but this is an example. Let's make sure I'm doing this correct so you can see this. All right. Here's an example of one of them that we had already done in class with our ordered pair, okay? If you remember, we created a graph, a line graph. This was the x-axis. This is the y-axis. We described it as something that you can use to measure something over a period of time. And we already had determined that you needed labeling on everything. The examples of plotting were the little red dots. You guys went ahead and told me what all those plots were. We discussed how X always comes first in your coordinates. For example, the coordinate for N, as shown on here, would be 1 and 1. You tested out very well on most of those. The coordinates for C would be 8 and 5 because we always use X first and Y second. We had you practice plotting points. We had you practice giving ordered pair. We had you practice telling me what is on a different ordered pair. For example, on this assignment, it would ask you a question like, what shape do you see on 5 and 9? And your answer was the circle. So we have practiced an awful lot. Actually, here is another example of one of your practice assignments that you did for homework or after we finished our class. We were measuring different things on different days, like I said, measuring things over a period of time. And this was actually a better example of some of them that we worked with because it's labeled. It shows you on Monday what the number of car sales were here. We went through all of this. On Tuesday, here's the number of car sales on Wednesday. And then we just drew them all together and we had our line graph. We were just plotting different things on different days of the week or over a period of time. And actually, this is where we started from. And again, I'm just giving you a quick review of line graphs. We said your x-axis, your y-axis, starting it, labeling it, putting all the information on it. We added plotting different things over a period of time. This one's labeled from time. You might even remember some of these charts. And then we talked about numerical and categorical and the difference between those two. We did a little game that we played where we matched them all. And that's pretty much a pretty good review of everything we've already done. We just added a little bit each day. And now we're going to add just a little bit more. I'm going to give you an introduction on how to plot two different lines. What if we had two different things that we were measuring, for example? What if we had two different things we were measuring? Okay, for example, Go to this one. If you were measuring your push-ups, for example, and this is really a good one that you might actually use at some point, maybe with Mr. Kennedy in PE or something like that. Okay. If you were measuring your push-ups, we would go to Monday and you'd say, oh, how many push-ups did I do on Monday? First of all, you can pay attention. These are differences in by colors. Your push-ups are in blue, your sit-ups are in red. So if you were measuring your push-ups, you would go to Monday and say, oh, I did 4 push-ups here on Monday. On Tuesday, you can see, follow it up the graph, you did 2 more push-ups. You did 6. And on Wednesday, and again, you could follow this for every day of the week and follow your push-ups. So my question was, what if we were measuring 2 different things, more than one? Can we do that on a line graph as well? Well, of course we can. All we have to do, and it is kind of hard on some graphs, I'm going to be honest. Some graphs, they don't differentiate the 2 different things by color. If they're the same color, you can see 2 different lines, but it's a little bit harder to tell which one is representing which one. So I do like it better if they are identified so in a different way. Maybe one line is a straight line, maybe one line is a curly line, or something to identify them as 2 different things. So our blue line here shows you that you're measuring push-ups every day and how many push-ups you did. The red line is how many sit-ups. Okay, so on Monday, we go, how many sit-ups did I do? Well, this point right here is right in between the 4 and 5, and we already talked about that with our ordered pair and where to plot them, that if it's in between something, we just go to that in-between number. Between 4 and 6 is 5. So that little dot means, oh, I did 5 sit-ups on Monday. Same thing that we did to plot our push-ups, we're going to plot our sit-ups. On Tuesday, if I follow Tuesday and I go up, you can see I didn't do anything any different. It's the same number as Monday, 5. Okay, they're the same. But my point is, you can put more than one thing on a line graph. You can graph 2 different things. It would get really messy, but you can graph even more if you choose to. So moving on from that, plotting 2 different things, two completely different things compared to each other, but on one graph. Now, when we write the information down, remember when we did that with our ordered pair, we only wrote down things like, oh, A and 3 and 4, 5 and 5. We wrote down our ordered pair. We can keep a track of whatever the information is in a chart. And the reason I say that is because what if you did have a chart with more than 1, more than 2, more than 3, more than 4? Can you imagine what this chart would look like? This chart would be kind of messy. I mean, you could have push-ups in one line. You could have sit-ups in another line. You could have jumping jacks in another line, maybe in a yellow line, monitoring your jumping jacks. And then you could have a purple line monitoring something else. But it would get pretty messy. So one good way to keep track of all the data that you're using when you're using more than one line on a line graph is to keep it in a chart. Keep that information charted the same way that we wrote down our ordered pair when we had just one line. You could write the ordered pair for 2 lines or for 3 lines. It doesn't matter. But keep a chart of your ordered pair that you are plotting when you have more than one, especially because the information can get kind of confusing if you have too much. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. Here you have 5 days. 5 days. We have Miss Lockhart and Mrs. Brown both collected coins. So you know that on your chart, it's going to look like coins, okay? The table below shows how much money they collected. This is just an example to show you what I'm talking about when I said keep your data collected in a chart, the same way we did with our ordered pair. On day one, Mrs. Brown collected, here is 25 cents. Okay. And Miss Lockhart collected 75 cents. On day two, Miss Brown collected 50 cents and Miss Lockhart collected $1.50. On day three, Miss Brown collected 75 cents. Miss Lockhart collected $2.25. Boys and girls, this is just an example of what I'm saying. Keep a chart to represent your data. I could use this data to put into a line graph and make a chart of it as long as I have the data somehow collected. And that's the important thing, especially when you start getting into more complicated charts that have more than one thing that you are measuring. You want to keep the data collected in some type of chart. Okay? That's the first thing that we're going to work with and practice, is just making sure that you collect your data properly. Now, I chose this chart to practice with real quick because it's the same chart we used before with our line graphs with one single graph. We followed, you might remember this because this is again, this is the same example we used before. So I went back and copied it and thought, why don't we go ahead and use the same one so you're familiar with it. This is Fido. You might remember Fido's weight. We talked about Fido's weight, the dog. And you can see this was the example we used to show that it was labeled at the bottom. The bottom label tells you that this is Fido's age in months on the x-axis. On the y-axis, it shows you that it's Fido's weight in pounds, okay? This shows you Fido's weight. And we already followed this graph. We said when Fido was 4 months old, this is 4 months in his age, we followed it up. He weighed, right here it's marked, and it's going 20, 40, 60. We said it was counting by 20s. So if it's counting by 20s, we know that in between, we had 10. So in between 20 and 40, we said was 30. At 4 months, Fido weighed 30 pounds. 30 pounds at 4 months. And at 8 months, when Fido was 8 months, we followed it up here and said this was 50, but a little bit more, not quite 60. So we said that was 55 pounds. Now, the thing that we didn't do, we did this so we could practice ordered pair and plotting on here, but we didn't keep a chart of it. We did not keep a chart of all of that data. Okay, that was the one thing that I knew we'd be adding later on. So we need to keep a chart of that data. If we said Fido at 4 months is, or weighs, I should say, 30 pounds, okay? That's what I mean by keeping track of the data. We went through it, we talked about it, and we identified it, but we didn't really keep it in a chart or write it down. In this case, because we're going to be adding more data, it's a good idea to keep it in a chart. And then the next one for Fido was, we said was at 8 months old, and we said at 8 months old, Fido weighed 55 pounds. So that's what I mean by keeping the data in a chart. We're going to be charting it now. It's better to keep it identified. Now, the thing that we're adding this week, like Mrs. Smith said, is having one more line. And that's all we're going to introduce today, is working with 2 lines. So what does that mean? Well, we have Fido. What if Fido has a brother or sister, another little puppy? And let's call Fido's little brother or sister Bruno. Okay, let's say we've got Bruno. Let's say we want to compare their brother and sisters, and so they were born on the same time. You would think that their charts would probably look pretty similar, right? Well, they may or may not. We don't really know until we compare them. If Fido at 4 months weighed 30 pounds, let's say Bruno, and we're going to call him Bruno, and I'm going to use the red to represent Bruno. At 4 months, let's say Bruno weighed 20 pounds, and we'll put that right there. So Bruno at 4 months weighed 20 pounds, okay? And then at 8 pounds, when Bruno was 8 months old, gotta get these things moving, okay. When Bruno was 8 months old, let's say Bruno weighed 40 pounds, okay? So Bruno at 8 months weighed 40 pounds. Okay. And that's all I'm talking about, boys and girls. I can go on and on and on. I'm just trying to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, that we can compare two different things on the same line. We can compare Fido's weight and Bruno's weight. And if I were to continue this, and I'm just making up, I could just make up a bunch of numbers to show you. Maybe, maybe Bruno's weight was way different than his brother, but they're, from the same litter. So you would expect them to be similar. They may or may not. Okay. So here's an example of plotting Bruno and Fido's weight all on the same graph. All on the same graph. Okay. And yes, we can, but I do want to make it very clear that it's good to keep that data with you at all times. Okay. And that's our introduction to graphs with two different lines on it for today. You're going to practice a little bit with it, and then we're going to add a little bit every day to this, and we're going to actually follow some patterns and figure out patterns later on also with all of this. So I'm going to let that go for today because you're going to practice with, let me get this, stop presenting, trying to get used to all these buttons and everything. You guys are used to that. So that's all we're going to do for today. I'm going to have you practice, and then we come back tomorrow. I'm going to add a little bit more to that every day. Thank you, guys.